I'm an alcoholic. My name is John, and I live in Dennis, Massachusetts, and I got sober going to the men's Hyannis Big Book meeting that was in Barnstable at the time, and that was 27 years old when I walked in there. That was long, it was a long time ago. As Mark said, he remembers me with the red hair because it's not red anymore. So, but right at the moment, I am in at Kiva Dunes in Gulf Coast, Alabama. So I'm on a golf trip with my brother, my nephew, a couple of my cousins, about 20 guys. So that's why I'm on a tight schedule, because there's 19 guys waiting for me to get my ass down there, and so they can go out to eat. But the most important thing here is the second part of the first step. And for me, I got sober young, obviously. I walked into a Thursday night meeting of men, and I really couldn't tell you what attracted me there. In fact, as I was saying earlier to Mark, when I left that meeting, I was with one of my brothers, and I have a lot of brothers. I have 5 brothers, and I have one sister. My sister's the youngest. So out of 7 siblings, 6 of us are sober, and everybody has, 35 plus years of sobriety plus. So I walked in there with one of my brothers, and I walked out and I said, I'm never going back there. That, you know, there was a lot of talk back then, these guys are whatever, a lot of BS. But I turned around 3 days later, and I asked the guy behind me to be my sponsor. And one of the things he told me to do was join that group, that Thursday night group. So I started going to that meeting every week. And, when I did this step, I really, to be very honest, I could tell you, I didn't really understand it. I kind of understood it a little bit, that my life was unmanageable, but I remember having a pretty long discussion with Donnie, my sponsor, that my life really wasn't that unmanageable, but the fact of the matter is that I could not tell myself the truth. The fact is that I could barely. I was just starting to get honest with myself. So for me to look at my life and say, well, my life's unmanageable because I drink alcoholically, and I really couldn't really do that at the time. I had a little bit of it, but not to the degree I know today. I know today that if I pick up the first drink, I'm in big trouble. It may not. I might be all right tonight. I might be all right for a week, but sometime down the road, I'm gonna be in a world of hurt. Because when I got sober, I was in a world of hurt. I was a shell of the man I am today. So when I read this stuff, and it says peculiar mental twist, or it says the queer mental blank spot, or it says suddenly the thought crossed my mind. I understand that. I can look back on my life when I was drinking, and one of the things I could never understand was I would I would get hammered, I'd get drunk. I'd wake up in the morning at 6 o'clock or whatever time. I'd get up, I'd go to work hungover. I'd go out through my whole day, and I wouldn't drink during the day. I would just smoke pot. That was better. And then at the end of the day, in the morning, I would tell myself I'm not going to drink that day. I'm not. I'm going to take the day off. But by 4 or 5 o'clock, when my day was ending at work, it was different. That thought had crossed my mind that a couple of beers or a beer would be okay. So what happened after I was in construction? So what would happen after I left the job was my truck would go to the package store, the nearest package store. Now, how my truck knew where to go was beyond me, but it knew where to go. I blame the truck, but somebody was behind the wheel. And I would go to the nearest package store, and the cycle would start again. Maybe if it was a Tuesday or Wednesday, I might only have a few beers. If it was a Thursday through Monday, then who knows what's going to happen? That was, for me, Thursday through Monday was the weekend. It was a long weekend, and I would be on a roll again. Who knows where I'd end up. So it wasn't until I got sober that I found out that making these promises to myself didn't hold any substance. I didn't live a spiritual life. I was brought up in a religion, in a spiritual life with good values. My parents obviously had their hands full with 7 children. Plus, they were immigrants. Both my parents are from Ireland. So, obviously, they had their hands full. I just didn't get it, to the fact that this thing that would happen in my brain was what was defeating me on a daily basis. And, whether I got into a car accident, whether I got into a fight, whether I got it thrown in jail, it didn't matter really what happened, because the next day I would just blame it on something, whatever it was, whoever it was. A few of those things had to start happening, starting to go to jail for, overnight visits. I moved to Houston, Texas for a little while. The same thing happened down there. I ended up in jail. I ended up drunk. I ended up in a fight, and that, for me, that wasn't who I was supposed to be. So it wasn't known. I didn't know at this point that my alcoholism was centered in my mind, and if I was relying on my own self-thinking, my own self-knowledge, I was going to lose every time. So when I got sober, some of the things my sponsor told me to do right away was, when you wake up in the morning, get on your knees, ask a power greater than yourself to stay away from the first drink or the first drug for the day. If you're successful, get back down on your knees and thank that higher power for a day of sobriety. I would go to a meeting every day. I got involved in Alcoholics Anonymous. I like to call it, I got soaking wet in Alcoholics Anonymous. I was, obviously a young man. I belonged to 2 groups. Back then in our area, most meetings started at 8:30 in the evening. They went for an hour and a half. There was a break. It was basically what's called a speaker meeting. A group came from another area. They would put on the meeting. X number of people would speak from the podium, and the meeting would end at 10 o'clock. I could never do that today. I'd be falling asleep. So that's what reading the literature, talking to other alcoholics, talking to my sponsor, and being involved in Alcoholics Anonymous. And that's how I got sober. That's how I started to understand that my brain likes to feed me BS. It's just bad information. So along the way, when I got 90 days of sobriety, I started reading the book. I read and did the first step with my sponsor, the first half. We read this chapter, I read this chapter, and we did this at some point or another. I look at it like he was fishing. He would throw the bait in the water, and then I would chase it around. And he'd get back to me, and he'd go, "I'll get back and read that again," So he'd throw the bait out there again, and I'd be, but I chased it. I chased it because, I understood at some point, when I was moving back from Texas, that I did not drink normally. Something was wrong, but I never could admit that it was alcohol. I could not admit it until it slapped me in the face. Until that last whatever car accident, fight, drunk, whatever it was, uh, and I had to look in the mirror and say, you know what, it is alcohol. And one of the things that happened to me was two of my brothers got sober at the same time, like 3 months before I did. So I sat there and watched these guys get sober. And that's what happened. I got a visual of two people that I knew very well, that I drank and drugged like, and I watched them get sober and I watched their lives change. Now, their lives didn't change that much, but they sure did look like they changed a lot to me. And, so it took a few months and they would stop by my house and I would say, see you later. I don't really need that. But it did, but it finally took. And one day I called one of them because I had stopped drinking. And I was just smoking pot. And I laugh about that because, like, for me, the pot didn't work. After 3 months, it just didn't do anything. So I ended up going to a meeting with them, and that's what I did. I started going to meetings, and I started being involved in groups, doing whatever I had to do, make the coffee, and really get active in Alcoholics Anonymous. And then, obviously, as I moved through the steps, I got a better look at who I was and was able to really start to get honest with myself. Because for me, I like to lie to everybody around me, and especially I like to lie to myself. My alcoholic brain does not want me to be honest. So today, I'm retired down here in this beautiful area with all these guys. They're all, well, for the most part, are all drinking. It doesn't really affect me. I can stay in the condo if I want to. I can go out to dinner with them if I want to. It's totally up to what I want to do. And I have a good time. We play golf every day, which is something I love to do. And I'm actually getting pretty decent at it. I'll never get as good as my brother, but that's those are high standards there. I really enjoy myself, and over the years, for me, one of the things I heard, which was just read, they fail to enlarge their spiritual life. So for me, on a daily basis, I try to enlarge my spiritual life. I do. I've done whatever it takes to enlarge my spiritual life. I go to meetings still. I'm 40 years sober. I still go to meetings. When I'm back home, I go to a morning meeting every 2 to 3 times a week. I go 2 to 3 meetings during the night, at nighttime. It is what I have to do. I still ask for help every morning. I still thank God every night. It's something I am unwilling to take a chance on. The fact, some people say you do this stuff, you'll never drink again. I don't agree with that. You do this stuff, if you continue doing this stuff, your chances of drinking are smaller. But you have to continue to do it, and you got to continue to be honest. For me, I have to continue to be honest, strictly honest with myself and with others. I have responsibilities today. I take those responsibilities very seriously. So God has been very good to me. I can't tell you how good a life I have. I'm not rich. I don't have a lot of money. I have enough to retire with my wife, and I have a really good life. And I have good friends, and I have a bunch of good family members around me. A little over a year ago, my sister, who had lived off Cape, which is an hour to 2 hours away, she moved to the Cape. Where did she move? She moved 2 doors down from me. I love it. It's freaking awesome. I dog sit her dogs. We call them the punks. and because they're little and they're punks. They're not punks. They're little. One's a Frenchie, and the other one's a punk. But I get that's the kind of life I have. It's it's really something, and to come from where I came, I would have never guessed the kind of life I have today. It's just so full of love. It's so full of appreciation and gratitude. Uh, and I'd like to thank Mark for having me on. And I want to apologize, but that I have to leave. But great meeting. If you're new, if you're writing, keep writing. It's worth everything you can put into it, and more. So thank you.